What's up everybody, it's Alex, the founder and CEO at Motoroso.com, and in this video we're going to do a step-by-step installation guide for the brand new Fab 4's Stubby bumper for the full-size new Bronco, as well as the accompanying Superwinch SX12 synthetic rope winch, the Factor 55 Fairlead and hook, as well as the Baja Designs LED lighting. Now if you want to learn more about all these products, we go into deep detail in our product spotlight video, put a link to that right here. But in this video, we'll show you how to get it installed. And it's a pretty simple install with basic tools, but at a couple points, it does get very, very heavy and you might need help from one or two friends. Now also, we had the factory modular bumper before we installed all of this. So if you have the plastic bumper, then the first part of this install video might look a little bit different from you, but I'm sure you'll be able to get that part figured out. Now, if you'd like to buy any of these products, we'll put links to everything in the description as well, where you can check it out on Motoroso.com, or you can call us toll-free at 833-MOTOROSO. But now, let's dig into this install.
First, we'll start by removing the OEM bumper and skid plate. Using a panel lever, remove the pop clips holding the tow hook cover in place and remove the plastic covers. Then remove the 6 13mm bumper mounting bolts. You can remove all the bolts and the bumper will not fall because it hangs on tabs. To remove the OEM bumper, lift up to unhook it and pull outward. Remove the plastic intercooler duct by pressing down on the retaining clips. Then remove the 4 15mm skid plate mounting bolts and remove the skid plate. Remove the 15mm bolts holding the skid plate mounting brackets in place and remove the mounting brackets. These hold the intercooler. It's okay to let it droop, but we propped it up just to be safe. With clear access, this is a good time to remove the crash bars in front of the front wheels. Simply remove the 2 15mm bolts on each side. Now before installing your stubby front bumper, you'll need to install the winch and any lighting you plan to use. And we'll start with the winch, so start by applying Loctite to the winch mounting bolts. Then place the winch mounting plate onto the bumper with the Fairlead bracket facing forward and line up the holes. Then place one of the square retain nuts onto the back hole of the base plate of the winch and set the winch into place on the winch mounting plate. Now because this winch is an extremely tight fit, it actually makes contact with the front pre-runner bar. We recommend starting with the 2 rear bolts on the winch to get it in place first. Snug these 2 rear bolts down to bring the front down closer to the holes. Then you can place the retained nuts and bolts for the front and properly tighten down the whole winch. Now we'll install our lighting, and we're using Baja Designs Squadrons. Now since the lights will be mounted in a hanging position on the bumper, we'll need to remove and flip both the lens and lens cover to be oriented correctly so the spot portion of the lens is on top and the logo is upright. To do this, unscrew the 4 2.5mm Allen bolts from the face of the lens cover. Then simply remove and rotate the lens and lens cover, making sure that the gasket is still in place. You can then replace the 4 2.5mm bolts. Now orient the mounting bracket so that the swooped back portion is towards the rear of the housing as seen here. To attach the mounting bracket to the light, insert your bolts on the sides of the bracket and place the spring washer between the bracket and the housing on each side. Then tighten this hardware snugly so you can still adjust it when you push on the light. To mount onto the bumper, place the mounting bolt and one washer through the bracket, then place another washer and loosely thread the nylock nut onto the bolt. Now slide the assembly onto the mounting position with the bracket underneath and the washer and nut on top. With a pair of box wrenches, tighten down the hardware firm enough to keep it in place but still allow for adjustability. We position the squadrons all the way forward on this mount. With the winch and lights installed, you're ready to mount the bumper on the vehicle. Now before you lift it into place, apply Loctite to the OEM bumper mounting bolts and place the Fab 4 supplied zinc washers on these bolts. You will need a second hand and possibly a third to help lift the bumper in place and install the mounting bolts. You only need to install 2 of the mounting bolts, then you can let the bumper hang. Install the remaining bolts at the front of the bumper and thread them most of the way in, but don't tighten them yet. Make sure to align the bumper to be centered on the Bronco before fully tightening down your bolts. Once you have the bumper properly aligned, you can fully tighten them. If you are not using the Fab 4 skid plate, you can now reinstall the OEM skid plate bracket by replacing the 4 15mm bolts. Make sure to align the intercooler rubber bushings with the holes and press the intercooler up to settle the top bushings. Then replace your OEM skid plate with the 4 15mm bolts you removed earlier. Now, if you are using the Fab 4 skid plate like us, which we highly recommend, you will not be reusing these brackets, so don't do this step. Now, if you are using the Fab 4 skid plate, which we highly recommend due to it being so much stronger than stock, start by removing both of the front 18mm bolts from the transfer case. Now apply Loctite to all the skid plate mounting bolts. First, hang the skid plate with a single bolt going into the transfer case. To mount the front bolts, first press the intercooler up into its upper rubber bushings to let it hang in place, and then align the skid plate bushing cutouts around the lower bushings and place the first bolt through the opening on the skid plate and snug this down. Place the remaining front bolts by reaching behind the skid plate, as well as the other 18mm transfer case bolt and one of the original 15mm skid plate bolts at the rear. With all these in place, you can fully tighten them down. With the bumper installed on the vehicle, you are now ready to wire up the winch. Pass the winch wiring along the inside of the bumper towards the driver's side corner. Make sure to follow the shortest possible path, because if you're anything like me, you'll need every inch you can get. To pass it upwards, it's easiest to drop a hanger down as a line feed through the gap between the frame and the radiator. Then hook it around the wiring and pull it up into the engine bay. Now run this wiring around the battery, hugging the driver's side. To wire the red positive line, we cut away some of the plastic on this shroud, and it sat nicely under the protective cover. Tuck the excess of the negative wire beside the battery and attach to the negative battery terminal. After the wiring is complete, connect the controller and test the winch to make sure everything is wired correctly. Start by letting some of the line out and then pulling the line back in. If you're using the stock Fairlead and hook, you can attach those the same way we're doing here, but we're using the upgraded Factor 55 Fairlead and UltraHook, which we highly recommend. To install the Factor 55 Fairlead, you'll need a new 40mm long bolt and nut. Simply feed the bolt and washer through the front of the Fairlead and winch mounting plate and thread a nut on the opposite side. Make sure everything is lined up nicely and tighten it down fully. If you're using a rope guard with your Factor 55 UltraHook, install that first by removing the rubber pads on the side you want to face outward, placing the rope guard with the logo up, and then setting the pound rivets in through the holes. A few taps with a hammer and die will set the rope guard in place. To connect the Factor 55 UltraHook to your winch rope, you'll need a C-clip tool to remove the C-clip holding the pin in. After removing the pin, place the rope eyelet and then replace the pin and reinstall the C-clip. Once the hook is installed, you can make it sit nicely against your Fairlead by setting the rubber bumpers against the Fairlead and winching the line in snugly to hold the hook tightly against the Fairlead. Don't overdo this, but don't leave it loose enough to flop around. Now we'll hook up our Baja Designs Squadrons by using the upfitter harness from Baja Designs. Start by cutting 6 inches back from the heat shielding to give yourself some room to work with. Attach the negative wire to the common grounding point on the firewall near the auxiliary wires on the driver's side. For your OEM aux switches, you have 6 options to choose from, and the wires are color-coded as you see here. For these, you only need a 10 amp fuse, so for this we're going to use switch number 3. For switch 3, locate the violet and green auxiliary wire, and then connect it to the plastic pinch connector on the lighting wiring harness. Now run the wires along the driver's side, behind the battery to the front of the engine bay where you previously ran the winch wiring. Run a hanger as a line feed up from below the bumper, up into the engine bay, and then tie it to the wiring harness, and pull the wiring harness down. Then run it across under the bumper and connect them to the lights using the small splitter. Test the lights by putting it in accessory mode and flipping on the switch 3 to make sure the lights are installed correctly, and if they don't turn on, run back through all your connections to troubleshoot.
All right, we hope you found that helpful. Now, if you want to learn more about the products we've installed, again, we made a product spotlight video. We'll put a link to that right here. We go into the details on all of these items. And of course, if you'd like to buy them, we'll put links to everything in the description where you can go to Motoroso.com or call us toll-free at 833-MOTOROSO. And if you'd like to put a little pep in the step in your Bronco, check out the Pedal Commander video right here. It's one of the easiest to install and least expensive mods that really changes the way the Bronco feels and wakes it up. Now make sure you subscribe to our channel as well, because we got lots more mods coming for our Bronco build and you're not going to want to miss out. Thanks for watching.